right, in 3, 2, 1. And welcome into This Life Matters. I am your host, one of your hosts, I should always say, Andrew Morgan. No special title, no special name, but the person, like I said last week, you came here to see, GG. She's got a bunch of special titles. She is, outside of GG being a special title, you also had your licensed practical counselor, right?
Licensed professional counselor,
Professional, yeah.
and supervisor. I'm a national board certified counselor. I'm a certified healing touch practitioner. I'm a certified clinical telemental health provider. Those are my current titles.
Current titles.
Yeah.
So that goes to show there's room for growth, right? And room for growth means that you are going to undertake certain transitions in life, meaning things will change. And as you know, we've been talking about cultural competency on This Life Matters. And part of being able to be culturally competent in a workplace and life is understanding that society, work life, no matter your personal relationships, they all transition, they all change, they all shift. And here's the thing, our biggest fear is that they don't shift for the better. That's usually what our big fear is. But the truth of the matter is most transitions are a good thing. Especially if your attitude is kind of set toward it being a good thing. So we're going to talk about transitions and some of the tools that you need in order to make a really good transition in life and in order to just deal with it. Because if you don't, deal with transitions well, what happens is anytime you sense a transition is coming, you'll be triggered, which is a lot like what we talked about last week, where when we talked about how individuals can be triggered by different things. And so we've got a really good show for you today. GG talks a lot about these things in her practice. So I'm gonna stop all of my intro talk and all the other things just to say, to ask you your piece on this word transition.
Today I was reading something I did get on Facebook. I didn't have a lot this morning to do. For some reason, it's raining here today, and I did a few things, but I was looking, and sometimes people put things on that aren't advertisements, and they aren't criticizing things, and they're kind of uplifting or thought-provoking. And one of the things that I saw today was posted by a former guest of this that was on This Life Matters,
Okay.
who was our former mayor, Kathy Taylor, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it looked like a card that I've seen. It was one of those square cards with bold writing. And it was, if you don't shape your life, someone else will.
That's good stuff. Yeah.
And I do talk a lot to people about curating their life. And when we do that, there are going to be transitions, and there's going to be places where there's the unknown. And in transitions, any transitions, I think there is that element of fear of the unknown. And if we think about things we have feared, it is the unknown. And we don't know what's going to happen the next minute or the next hour. We only know what's happening in the present. We know what's happened in the past. We know what's going on right this second. But anything else in the future is the unknown. And we do have that fear of the unknown. So I'm wondering if when we're thinking about these transitions that we're making, some of them are things we want to do. They're plans that we're making. We're looking forward to things. Some of them are thrust upon ourselves that in our lives, and we're not planning those. They're not things that we wanted to happen. We're having to react to them. We're having to make transitions that aren't comfortable for us, and we didn't intend to do. So that's kind of my take on transitions, I guess.
I think for me, when I take a look at the scary side, like the transitions that we try to avoid that are going to happen in life, such as death, death typically will transition us into a different phase. You know, some of us, you know, may have been this to that particular loved one, but now we don't know, how do you put it in perspective? You know, how do you continue to be the husband or the wife of someone who has passed away? How do you carry people's memory with you? And I think those are the tougher transitions that sometimes that I think we get caught up in and not understand what's next. And I think that's one of the important factors of why we get support. You know, we go to support groups, we go to therapy, we do everything we can to get a better understanding of what we're going through. Not that it's going to uh, end the pain or, you know, or solve that issue or whatever it might be. I think one of the most painful transitions, and I've talked about this down through the years on This Life Matters, that I'd ever gone through was a divorce. That divorce felt like a slow death, because you can have good moments, and then all of a sudden you were reminded of this great failure, you know, like, and then you had a bad moment, you know, and it was always a transition, a consistent transition or vacillation between emotions from one to the next. But that transition brought me into a space of singleness. It took me from being with one person to now I had to think about things single-minded. You know, like even though I had still had these dual, like these responsibilities that called for two people, such as parenting, but I still had to make the transition of like, oh, now I am a parent. Although I'm parenting by myself, I'm still parenting with someone else. And it's that weird bipolarity, like, of the situation. It's like it's two mindsets that you have to have to figure out what exactly is going on. So some of those transitions I feared so much that I let them affect and inform my future. And I stopped doing productive, healthy things for me in order to guard my heart from that pain happening again. And that was because my perspective was bent on it not happening again, opposed to a more positive perspective of really understanding that I survived it. I got through it. And if I did it before, it can be done again. And in fact, I now have the tools to do it better if I stop, take assessment of what I've been through, and then go ahead and set me some like evidence-based markers moving forward. Like, can I be more positive moving forward in the future to prevent this type of hurt from happening again? Not to prevent like divorce or whatever, but how can I remain happy and in love? And this may sound kind of bad, but in love with myself, or how can I stay connected to my joy? And do I have, and so when I say evidence-based markers, it's not like, oh, I need to do this so that I'll never be divorced again. No, how can I stay in tune with what's going to give me joy? Because I don't know when, and I can't control when, just the facts of life, so to speak, or the things of life are going to come on me. So what I can control is me and the amount of joy that I can give myself, because I don't know when death is coming or divorce or any of those things. But the best thing that I can do is love myself and love my life, you know?
Right. And so evidence-based markers, you know, in research, that's what we do. I do that in Healing Touch when I'm doing a session. I find out what's your stress level now from 0 to 10. If it's 8, well, then we want to reduce it to 9 or less. You know, I give myself that much. I'm not going to say, you know, go to 5, but uh, I guess we could use that system for lots of things about how much joy are we experiencing in our life right now, because there's a lot of things going on around us all the time. There's when we get news, when we see political things, when we have weather events, even that can throw people into a panic. And in Oklahoma, we're sitting here in tornado season, so you
Yeah.
know that affects a lot of people. So what we're saying is, how do we set ourselves up for success, to find joy, to practice finding joy, So when these things that come up that aren't of our own making, and sometimes they are of our own making,
Yes.
we can still not succumb to fear, anxiety, frustration, um, all of those things, the hurt, the pain, the feeling inadequate, disappointment, so it doesn't take us down, in other words. So we can still be who we are, and we don't allow things to change us in a way that we still can't find happiness and joy.
Yeah. No, I get that. Like you know, and that's the funny thing about being on top of, and we're always advocates of you being honest and open and being on top of your mental health and getting assessments, because that's one of the biggest things that depression stole from me. And I use that language intentionally in saying stolen, because you know it, I did not understand why I didn't have a passion or a joy for certain things. And there were times and moments where it was just like, hey, I'm doing this, but why? And that became one of those things of like, it's too late evidence-based markers, or it's like, oh man, my joy is, I'm not having joy in something anymore. And then I look up and I realize, oh, I'm back here again. And I think as it relates to, I bring that up just like as it relates to transitions, if I'm not taking care of those things like every day, having intentional quiet moments to listen to myself, because I'm worthy to be listened to. Like I can't convince you to listen to this show if I'm not listening to myself and taking in and valuing what's going on with me, then I'm going to always value someone else. And once I have other people's values and systems dictating my actions, then I'm in that cycle again. And,
Yeah.
briefly, every now and again, I get into a position where I can feel like, well, briefly, that person's acceptance of me, that person, um, rewarding me for me assimilating to their value system, that wears off really quickly. And then I'm stuck with the guilt of like, oh, I sold myself out. And so staying connected to myself, and at the end of every day, at the beginning of the day, really assessing, or even just sometimes it doesn't have to be at the beginning or the end of the day. It could be like before I go into a meeting, then after the meeting, listening to myself, then listening to myself afterwards, but not getting so pumped up on, like what does the rest of the world say about me? What does everyone else say? Or how did that come across? How do I feel with myself right now? How can I, because when the transition comes to another job, another level, another thing, if I transition away from this circumstance or situation, guess who's still going to be with me? Me. And so I need to at least be used to listening and be okay being alone with me and being okay, um, with the value of who I am.
This relates directly to our last show that we did. Um, and we talked about re-experiencing past trauma. And some of that trauma that we experienced is informing if we believe that we're worth having joy in our
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
or accepting who we are and valuing ourselves. Uh, and sometimes that comes from actually the messages we receive from parents. And that's why we talk about that so much on our shows, the messages that we give our children, our grandchildren, our spouses, um, our friends, but especially parents giving those messages to children. And one of the things that is a big message that people don't always think about is the actual time that we spend with a child.
Mm, yeah.
Parents, we get as people, and children get that how we spend our time is what is important to us. And if a parent can't spend puts a child, well, I can't talk to you right now because I'm going to go to the golf course. I can't talk to you right now because I'm going to make this important phone call. Okay, well, can the important phone call not wait a few minutes or 5 minutes so we can actually connect with that child? Because the message the child gets is, I'm not important. And so sometimes those messages that we've gotten as children come back to haunt us as adults, not sometimes, all the time. It informs a lot about how we view ourselves and about how we view how we can do transitions. And are we capable of that? And do we even deserve to have joy in our life? If somebody told us that we don't, that we're not important, then why would I think that I could have joy in my life and that that would be an important thing for us to work on and to make sure that we think that we can curate, that we can form our own lives the way we want it, that we can shape our days, that we can shape our hours, we can make our plans, that that's important and that we're worthy of that. Some people didn't get that message, and they don't believe that.
Yeah. And it's so important to, I think that once again goes to back to the factor of like, this is why, um, getting, even as an adult, when you recognize you didn't get certain things, then it's never too late to fill up the tank. And you need to be in safe spaces. And this is one of the reasons why, people tell you to create a safe circle and to create safe people to be around that will affirm you and like, and really, believe in you. Because if the voice that you are speaking to, your, like earlier, I was saying, listen to yourself. If that voice is really mom's voice or dad's voice, saying I'm too busy or you're not worthy or whatever it might be, um, sometimes you need a circle that tells you the opposite. And I deal with that a lot in my personal life of, as I'm dealing with it, I think one of the key factors for me is to have always been to, even if I don't have a circle of people directly around me, to still, and as silly as it may sound, I will go on to YouTube and listen to, some affirmations and listen to people who are saying positive things, even if it's not personal to me, and try to apply it as much as I can. It's one of the things that, even for me, from a religious standpoint, that's one of the things that drew me to Christianity, is because there's a lot of affirmation within the Bible. If you are looking for it, and not looking for something to condemn other people. When you're looking to be built up, there is plenty being said about you and who you are. And that was one of the mainstays for me, because I did not feel adequate about who I was. But then I found a sense of worth within my religious structure. And that's okay to admit, like, that's okay to know. A lot of people find shame in that. And it's like, no, this, never be ashamed of that. Like, if you believe that God says something good about you, let the world know that. Like, I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe that I was a friend of God. Like, but I believe that to be real. And so I act on that belief. When I feel I have no friends whatsoever, I have literally survived moving to cities with no friends, with hardly any family, and I'm okay, because I have a belief system that runs deeper than, can I go next door and the person likes me, those type of things. So, um, I think that there's some, when it comes to, there's one last point I want to kind of make when it comes to the concept of, like, when we talk about transition, and like even with the cultural competency piece and everything that I'm saying, it really goes in really well with what we see going on in this country. And what you're saying, like what we're saying, when you have a better understanding on who you are, you're less prone to mob mentality. And that's not speaking to things such as like, yeah, you're allowed to have a knee-jerk reaction. I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm not saying you need to sit back and wait for all the evidence. No, if something angers you, be angry about it. It's okay. But what I'm saying, you know, I'm talking about the concept of if the world is transitioning and it's changing, and the value structures and the systems that you're used to are starting to move away, you need to be okay being who you are. You need to be okay in your personal belief system because that can't shift. So if you feel like this country is going to hell in a handbasket because there's transgender laws and there's Asian law, laws to protect Asians and black people all of a sudden want to stand up and have a voice, and if those things anger you, be okay. Figure a way to be okay with you because those things are gonna change. We have to evolve. We have to do better. So if and that's part of understanding transitions happen. And if you want to be culturally competent, if you want to have some sort of peace in your life, be okay with you because this world is going to change. There's nothing you can do about it at all. So these tools aren't just for like the liberal minded person, so to speak. These are tools for even the most conservative, especially the most conservative person on the block, because you need to be okay with you. You need to be okay with the factor that, like, hey, things are not going to stay in a way that's comfortable for you. Other people need to breathe also. You're going to have to, I don't want to use any analogy that could be offensive to so many people who've died, unfortunately, in a bad way where they've had their breath taken. So I apologize for saying that using that part, but you get the point of what I'm getting at. GG, before I put my foot in my mouth even further.
Mhm. You're talking about some of the ways that you use to keep yourself encouraged and keep yourself motivated and uplifted. And you mentioned your belief in the Christian religion. And I was thinking all the major religions, all the major spirituality religions of the world have those same elements. It's not only Christianity. It's all the other religions do have the same element of that. And whether people are going to church or not, I mean, I know there's a big downplay right now. The numbers are down in people that say that they don't have one religion or another, but most people actually do have a belief in a higher power. And so whatever that can be I'm saying that can be a very valuable tool in your toolbox to have for making transitions in your life. And I have found that to be a necessity for myself as well. So these are just some of the things that we wanted to bring up today in our show about the triggers that come from the past informing how we make transitions, how we think of ourselves, and that we do have the ability, no matter who you are, you can have the most money in the world and still be in a stranglehold, so to speak, of not feeling that you have control over your life. You can have $0. There are things that we can control in our lives. And I think that the fear of the unknown and the fear of losing control, that is a major feelings in why sometimes we have such problems with transitions. So it's just something that we wanted to throw out there for you to think about and to maybe spend some time journaling on or writing or thinking or figuring out, okay, there's transitions that come. How do I want to handle those in my life? What's important to me about how I want to handle transitions? Do I want to be able to be kind of steady in myself, be the same person, not get as flustered, do I want to not be dramatic? There are people that get very dramatic in transitions. And or how do I want to do it? That's up to you. That's a personal choice. So we're just throwing some things out for you to think about.
Yep. Well, that's the show for this week. Remember, you can always catch us audio. We always release the audio before we release the video of This Life Matters. So if you are a podcast fan, anywhere that you can find a podcast, you can definitely find This Life Matters, Spotify, Google Podcasts, as well as Apple Podcasts, and a few other really great places that you can pick up on podcasts. You'll find This Life Matters in one form or the other. We also upload to Facebook on Wednesdays as well as YouTube. So you can catch us in both of those places. We'll have a few more resources available to you coming up this summer with This Life Matters and a few different things that we'll be doing. So thank you so much for listening this week to This Life Matters. And remember, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. I absolutely love you. And thank you so much for listening to This Life Matters. And GG.
Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Martin Luther King. And thank you from me. Thank you for listening or viewing. And we will see you next time on This Life Matters.
All right.